Have you ever gotten totally pulled into a story and wondered what the author did to make it so good? Like, how'd they make it so captivating? Well, we're going to take a deep dive into that today with seven-figure fiction.
By Theodora Taylor.
Right, Theodora Taylor. So have you read this one?
Yeah. Yeah, I have. What I think is so interesting about Taylor is that, she's a successful romance author.
Yeah.
But she doesn't really fit the mold of what we think of when we think of a bestseller. She's pretty open about not hitting those, huge bestseller lists.
Right.
Or having this massive, niche following.
Okay, but she's making seven figures.
But she's making bank.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly.
So what's her secret?
Well, and that's what I think is so fascinating about her, right?
Yeah.
She attributes a lot of her success to this idea of universal fantasy, or UF, as we'll call it.
UF. Now that does sound kind of mystical.
Yeah, it does. It makes it sound like, something out of a fantasy novel, right?
Right.
But it's actually a really practical way to look at what makes stories work, like what makes them resonate with readers. It's kind of like the underlying why that gives a story that pull that makes you want to keep reading.
Okay, so I'm picking up that it's not just about the tropes, right?
Exactly.
It's not just, oh, this is enemies to lovers or this is billionaire romance.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, the tropes are important. Don't get me wrong. Like, they're the what of the story, but universal fantasy is like the why.
Okay.
And that's what, that's the secret sauce that elevates a good story to truly captivating, can't put it down.
I love that secret sauce. So good.
Yeah.
And she actually uses an analogy in the book that I really like. She compares it to butter.
Yes.
I love that.
The perfect analogy.
Yeah.
Because just like butter, universal fantasy makes everything better, right?
It does.
It takes a story that have good structure, solid characters,
Yeah.
and it gives it that something special, that je ne sais quoi, that readers crave.
Yes. Okay, I'm with you. So how does this butter actually work in practice? And I'm thinking right now, like Belle from Beauty and the Beast, that opening scene, yearning for something more, classic.
Classic. And that right there, that's a prime example of universal fantasy. That is the fantasy of escaping the ordinary.
Oh, okay.
And it's so powerful because it's not about the castle. It's not about the magic. It's about this deep-seated desire to be whisked away from a life that doesn't quite fit. And it's something that I think all readers, crave on some level.
Yeah, and we see that play out in so many stories, and not just fairy tales.
Right.
I'm thinking about, gosh, what was that book I just read? Keeping Lily, I think it was called.
Okay.
And the heroine's swept away from her life, which is terrible, but, well, in this case it was a mafioso.
Yeah.
A hot mafioso.
Sure.
But it's that same kind of, I'm being taken away from all of this,
Exactly.
mundane terribleness.
Yes, it's that primal desire to be chosen, to be seen as desirable, as worthy, and worthy of rescue, even if the circumstances are a bit unconventional. It's about escaping the mundane,
Sure.
right, and being swept up in something exciting and unexpected.
Okay, so we've got this escape from the ordinary. What other kinds of butter does she find in something like A Beauty and the Beast?
Okay, well, this one I think particularly stands out. It's the bully who secretly likes you.
Okay.
So if you think about Beauty and the Beast, you've got Gaston,
Yeah.
right? He's this very obvious choice. He's
But he's the popular, good-looking.
Yeah, but then you've got the Beast, right? And he's this gruff, rough around the edges character, but he's the one who actually sees Belle.
Right. Yeah.
For who she really is.
Sees her inner beauty.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know if I've encountered that in real life. Maybe, not with someone as hairy as the Beast.
Yeah.
But there's something about that bad boy with a heart of gold.
Right, exactly.
Even if you know better.
Exactly. And there's a reason why that fantasy is so enduring, I think.
Yeah.
Because it taps into this primal desire to be chosen, to be desired, maybe even possessed by somebody who other people can't have,
Yeah.
It's this excitement, but then also this security of knowing their heart is yours.
Oh, I like that. There's a safety there.
Yeah.
Oh, that's so good. And it makes me think about all those those alpha heroes that we see in books and movies, right?
Yes.
They often have that kind of dangerous, I could get into trouble with you, but also I feel safe with you.
Exactly. Yeah. The alpha character with their dominance, their possessiveness, it's another classic example of universal fantasy. It's about that feeling of being safe, of being protected, even if it comes with a little bit of danger, a little bit of rule breaking.
Yeah, it's exciting.
It's intoxicating.
It
Yeah.
is exciting. And you know what I like about it is that it's like we get to experience that without the real life consequences,
Uh,
which,
exactly right.
yeah.
And that's what I think is so crucial. That is what makes universal fantasy so powerful, is that readers get to sort of, you know, explore those desires, those fantasies, but in this safe space.
Right, it's fictional, so it's safe.
It's liberating.
Yes, I like that a lot. So how do we apply this beyond Beauty and the Beast? I mean, is this like a one-size-fits-all kind of thing?
Not at all. No. In fact, one of the things that I think is so valuable about her book is that she doesn't just, define universal fantasy. She actually gives this really practical framework for like how to identify it across a whole bunch of stories.
Okay, and that's where it gets really interesting because she breaks down these examples from like, classic fairy tales to things that are way more modern, like, Grey's Anatomy,
Right.
Scandal.
Right, exactly.
These are things that people know, you
Yeah.
know?
And it shows that, this idea of universal fantasy, it's not limited to a genre. It's not limited to a certain time period. It's really about tapping into those core desires, those fantasies that, we all have as humans.
It's like the secret code to writing stories that really connect.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're not just talking about princesses and dragons. We can find this in like Grey's Anatomy, a hospital drama.
Oh, totally. Grey's Anatomy is such a great example. Like, even that very first episode, right? It throws you right into the drama with Meredith. She has this one-night stand, and then boom,
He's her boss.
he's her boss.
The forbidden romance.
Yeah.
I mean, what is it about that that's just so, like,
Oh, it's delicious, right?
it's so good.
It's that allure of the forbidden. It's
Yeah.
that thrill of breaking the rules and exploring something taboo, even if it's just through the characters that you're invested in.
Right.
It's exciting.
Yes. And we can't forget the competition, right?
Yes.
I mean, these surgical interns are constantly battling it out to, like, be the best.
Yes. Which is that brings us to another really compelling element of universal fantasy, is this idea of the competition avatar. So as viewers, we get to experience, those highs and lows, the thrill of victory, the sting of defeat, all from the comfort of our own living room.
Right, and without the pressure of actually having to perform surgery.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
I'm good.
Much less stressful. But it's tapping into those, those primal desires for competition, for recognition, for achievement.
Right.
But again, in this safe fictional setting.
Right.
And that is so engaging.
It is. Gosh, this is making me realize like how many of my favorite stories are fueled by this. And I don't even realize it when I'm like, engrossed in it. It's not like I'm sitting there thinking,
Right, you don't consciously necessarily think about it.
yeah, but it's there.
It's there, yeah. And once you become aware of it, you start to see those patterns.
Right. It's like this, like you've unlocked this hidden level of the storytelling.
Exactly.
Love it. Okay, so she gives us all this, great information, but then she tells us how to actually use it.
Right.
Like how to weave it into our own writing. So give me the inside scoop. Okay, well, I think one of the most impactful things, strategies that she talks about is this idea of backlist before frontlist.
Backlist before frontlist.
Yeah.
What does that even mean?
So basically, it's about looking at the work that you've already created,
Oh, okay.
stuff you've already published that has been successful,
Got it.
and looking at it with fresh eyes.
Okay, so I'm looking at my old work. I'm like, all right,
Yes.
through the lens of universal fantasy.
Yes. What universal fantasies were at play in those stories? Why did those stories resonate with readers? That's like a gold mine of information.
It's like we're reverse engineering our successes.
Well, I know
Understand like the why behind the what.
Exactly. And you can use that information to then, inform your future writing.
Yeah.
She even talks about, once you've identified those universal fantasies that have worked for you in the past, actually crafting ads around those fantasies as a way to kind of test those fantasies and see what hooks readers.
So smart. It's like I get to peek into the minds of my audience.
Exactly. It takes the guesswork out of marketing.
It does. So good. So let's say I've done that. I've analyzed my backlist and I'm like ready to tackle a new story. How do I actually like incorporate this universal fantasy into my process?
Well, she advocates for a very strategic approach to outlining, which she calls outlining for the win.
Okay.
I know some writers have a real love-hate relationship with outlining, but
Tell me about it. Some days I love it. Some days I'm like, this is too restrictive. Like,
I just want to write.
totally. I get it. But I do think I do think outlining, especially when you're working with this concept of universal fantasy, I think it's really valuable
Okay.
because it allows you to really intentionally weave those fantasies into the story.
Okay, so we're not just sprinkling a little butter. We're like really we're baking it into the whole cake.
Exactly.
I love that.
Yeah. So she breaks it down into, a few key steps. So you begin by outlining your story in a very general way, right?
Yes.
Just like the high level view of the plot.
Okay, so I'm getting the big picture down.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Then, once you have that, then you break that down into, individual scenes or chapters, and you're really zeroing in on those key events, those turning points.
Right, that make the story, yeah, exactly, that propel the story forward. And this is really where I think the magic happens. Because under each of those scene or chapter summaries, you identify the universal fantasy at play.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
Yeah.
So each scene has a purpose when it comes to delivering those core fantasies that I've identified.
Exactly. Exactly.
That's so smart.
Yeah, it keeps you focused,
It's like a checklist.
Yes, and make sure that every scene is working hard to keep your readers, you know, invested, right? No
Mhm.
more like meandering subplots or like filler scenes.
Which I think so many writers, myself included sometimes, can, fall into that trap. It's like, oh, this is a really cool idea. And then,
Right, it's a shiny object.
yeah, and it's not serving the story.
Exactly.
Okay, I love this. So what else does she have for us?
Okay, so she takes it a step further, and this is really interesting. She actually suggests that you create an ad before you write,
Hold on, an ad. Like I'm writing ad copy before the
Mhm.
book is done.
before the book is even finished.
Tell me more.
Because it's this brilliant litmus test. Because if you can't articulate those fantasies in a way that's compelling,
Right, right.
then you might need to go back to the drawing board and make sure that those elements are strong enough to actually hook a reader.
That's brilliant. I love that. It's like you're almost creating like a teaser trailer for your book.
Exactly.
And if it doesn't grab you,
Right, it needs work.
it needs work. Oh, I love it. Okay, so I've got my backlist, I've got my outline, I've got my killer ad copy. Am I ready to write now?
Almost. She has a few more, like, golden rules, for crafting a story that really resonates and ultimately sells.
Hit me. What are they?
Okay, so the first rule, it's deceptively simple, okay? Every scene, and I mean every single scene, should have at least one universal fantasy at play.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Okay. So that keeps the pacing tight. It keeps the
It
story.
keeps it moving, yeah. And it's about constantly reminding yourself, right, of what those core desires are. What are the elements that are going to hook those readers?
So every scene has to earn its place.
Yes. Every scene needs to be pulling its weight.
Love that. Okay, what's the next one?
Okay, so this one might sound a little different. Every scene should be either bestie-worthy or Instagram-worthy.
Okay, I'm a little lost on that one. So what does that actually look like in practice?
Okay, so ask yourself this, right?
Hmm.
As you're writing a scene, ask yourself, is this scene interesting enough that I would call my best friend to tell them about it? Or would I post about it on social media?
Okay, yeah.
If the answer is no, it might need a little bit more of that universal fantasy butter.
It's about creating those moments that you can't wait to share,
Right.
right? Whether it makes you laugh, it makes you cry, it makes you gasp.
That's about sparking a reaction.
Yeah. Yeah, those are the moments that stay with people.
Exactly. The moments that they talk about, that they share. And more often than not, those moments are fueled by those universal fantasies.
Oh, so we're not just writing for ourselves, we're writing for an audience.
Exactly. We want to give them something to talk about.
Yes, I love that. Okay, give me rule number 3.
Okay, number 3. This is one of my favorites. Buttering to taste.
Ooh, I love where this is going because, I love a good metaphor.
It's so true. And I love to cook, so this one really resonates with me. It's like recognizing that not every story needs to be, slathered in universal fantasy.
Okay, yeah.
Some stories might just need a little pat of butter,
Right. Some need the whole shtick.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And as the writer, you kind of have to trust your instincts to find that right level that feels authentic to your voice, to your story.
Right. Makes sense. Okay, hit me with the last one.
All right, so this one might be a little bit controversial. She calls it moral to taste.
Moral to taste.
Yeah,
I'm intrigued.
I know, right?
Break it down for me.
So what this really means is that she's acknowledging that some universal fantasies might touch on some, sensitive subjects, right? They might be a little bit taboo. They might explore some of those darker, more complicated desires that people maybe don't want to admit to in their real lives.
Right, because these are real human desires and not all of them are, you know?
Exactly. Not all sunshine and roses.
Yeah.
Right. And her point is that it's okay to explore those more challenging desires,
Hmm.
right, in fiction,
Sure.
as long as it's done in a way that feels true to you as the author and to your overall story.
So it's okay to kind of like push boundaries a little bit, but to be mindful of my own boundaries, I guess, and the boundaries of my readers.
You got it.
Yeah.
And remember, fiction is this amazing space where we can explore, those desires, those themes that maybe we wouldn't feel comfortable exploring in our real lives.
Sure. And I can think of so many like books and movies that have tackled really, really tough subjects, but they've started important conversations
Exactly.
by going to those places.
Right. So it's a delicate balance, of course, but it's about finding that sweet spot, right, where you're exploring without, exploiting.
Right. Yeah, this is making me think about universal fantasy as more than just, a writing tool. It's almost like this, like a framework for understanding like what makes us tick as humans.
That's a great point. I mean,
Yeah.
it's about recognizing those common threads, those universal desires that connect us all as humans.
I love that. I feel like you've handed me a key, to unlock this whole new level of understanding, not just of myself and of other people, but of, the stories that we tell.
Yes.
But you've also mentioned that Taylor believes universal fantasy isn't just for, books and movies. Is that right?
Oh, absolutely not. In fact, one of the, I think, most fascinating points that she makes is that it's woven into the fabric of our everyday lives.
I love that. Give me some examples. How does that show up in my everyday life?
Well, I mean, think about social media for a second, right?
Okay.
Think about those carefully curated Instagram feeds,
Oh, yeah.
the witty tweets, the, perfectly posed photos. I
Yeah.
mean, it's all tapping into those universal fantasies, right?
Yeah.
The desire to be seen as successful,
Right.
attractive.
Interesting.
Interesting. Yeah, and it's not just, the digital world, right? I mean, think about the way that we interact like face to face,
Okay.
right? We tell stories, we share anecdotes, we present ourselves in ways that are engaging, that are entertaining.
We're all storytellers,
We are.
whether we realize it or not.
Exactly. We're hardwired for it.
Wow. This is blowing my mind. I never realized how much storytelling is just in, like, everything.
It's everywhere. And once you see it, you can't unsee it.
That's so cool. All right, so we've talked about how this shows up in our writing and how it shows up in life in general. What about characters? Because that's a big one for me. I love a good character.
And we too.
Like, I love to really dig into their backstories, like what makes them tick. So does she have anything to say about that?
Oh, yeah. She has a whole section on this. And she gives this really simple but effective framework for developing characters through this lens of universal fantasy.
Okay, tell me.
Okay, so you start with the basics, right? You identify the character's goals, their motivations, their conflicts.
Okay.
The classic GMC.
Got it.
But then, this is where it gets good. You layer in the universal fantasy. So what fantasies does this character embody?
Oh, okay.
And what fantasies do they represent to the reader?
So I'm going kind of a level deeper,
Yeah.
and I'm looking at those underlying desires and motivations
Yes.
that
Yeah.
make them relatable.
We want to create characters that resonate on that primal level. We're tapping into those universal desires, those fantasies.
It's like I'm giving my characters a secret weapon.
Yes,
It makes them magnetic.
It adds a whole other dimension to your character development.
I love it because it's almost like these characters then become avatars for those universal fantasies.
Yes.
It allows the reader to like experience them vicariously.
Exactly. And that's what makes them so captivating.
Oh my gosh. I'm going to go back and like reimagine all my characters now. It's like I can level up all my characters with this.
Right. And, it's never too late to revisit your characters, Even characters you've already created, go back and look at them and see, are there opportunities where I can weave in those elements, Give them that extra something special.
Right, because even if we've already written them, we can make them even more relatable, even more engaging.
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly. Breathe new life into them.
I love it. No, you did mention that you don't have to be, a writer like me to get something out of this. So how can understanding this idea of universal fantasy help someone even if they're not, actively crafting stories for a living?
Yeah, you absolutely don't have to be a novelist or a screenwriter
Yeah.
to benefit from this. I mean, understanding universal fantasy, it can really enrich the way that you experience any story.
Okay.
Whether you're, reading a book, watching a movie, or even just listening to a friend, tell you about their day.
Oh, I like that. It's like this secret decoder ring. It's like I can look at any story now and go, aha, I see what you're doing there.
Exactly.
Ah.
Exactly. It can make you like a more engaged, more discerning consumer of stories.
Yeah.
Because you start to notice, okay, what are those elements, those moments that are really grabbing my attention,
Yes.
that are evoking like a really strong emotional response?
Yeah. And then I can ask myself, okay, what is it about that? What universal fantasy is at play here? Why am I connecting with this?
Exactly. Exactly. It's like you're
Ah.
you're taking this deep dive into the author's toolbox and you're seeing how they're using those tools.
I love it. It's like, we've all enjoyed a great meal, but now it's like I'm understanding like, oh, that blend of
All
flavors.
right, what's in this?
Yes, that the chef used. It's like taking it to a whole other level.
Right. And just like with food, I think understanding those elements can really deepen our appreciation, even
Yes.
for the simplest stories.
I'm going to go back and watch all my favorite movies, read all my favorite books with this in mind.
I encourage you to.
Yeah.
And I would also say don't stop there.
Mhm.
Think about the stories that you encounter in your everyday life,
Yeah.
the anecdotes that your friends share, the articles that you read online, even, just snippets of conversation that you overhear on the street.
It's not just about these, very carefully crafted stories. It's about understanding that storytelling is in everything.
It's everywhere.
Yeah.
Universal fantasy is all around us. It's shaping our interactions. It's shaping the way we see the world.
This has been amazing. Honestly, this whole deep dive has just been so eye-opening, and I feel like I've gained this new perspective on storytelling, but also on human nature and the power of connection, really.
And that's the incredible thing about knowledge, right?
Mm.
Is that it unlocks these possibilities. It expands our understanding.
It does. So the next time that you are reading a book or watching a movie or even just listening to a friend tell a story, think about the universal fantasies at play. What is that deeper desire being explored? What is it? What's that universal truth that's resonating? Because when we understand those desires, when we understand those fantasies, it's like we unlock this whole other level of storytelling.
Yes, as creators, as
Mm.
consumers, it's all about those stories,
Yeah.
right? The stories that shape our lives.
So good. And hey, who knows? You might even uncover a few of your own universal fantasies.
Right.
This has been so great. Thank you so much for taking this deep dive with me.
Thank you.
And to everyone listening, until next time, we'll keep exploring the power of story.